You believe there was reason to investigate foreign ties to Charlie Kirk and were told by the FBI, DOJ?
FBI and DOJ, yeah.
No, you're not allowed to investigate that.
Stop. It's done. Basically cut off our access to be able to get into that information.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen enough. Erika Kirk should be dragged into a police precinct for questioning. Like I said, you can show me the person who disagrees with me on.
Before you even try to make sense of what's happening right now, you need to understand this isn't just another internet controversy. This just escalated into something serious. Because Erika Kirk is now reportedly taking legal action against a private investigator. And the timing of it? That's what has people raising eyebrows all over again. For weeks, the internet has been watching, analysing and questioning everything surrounding her public appearances after Charlie's passing. From the way she speaks to how quickly she stepped into the spotlight to moments that people say just didn't feel natural. And just when it seemed like the conversation might start slowing down, this lawsuit drops. Not a statement, not a clarification, legal action, and that changes everything. Because now people aren't just asking questions anymore, they're asking why this move happened right now. Was it to protect her name? To shut down certain narratives? Or is it something deeper that the public hasn't fully seen yet? And the craziest part is, instead of calming things down, this move has done the exact opposite. It's made the conversation louder, more intense, and way more divided. Some people are saying she's finally defending herself against false claims, while others are convinced this just added another layer to a story that already didn't sit right with them. And once you start connecting everything, the interviews, the reactions, the warnings not to investigate, and now this legal step, it starts to feel like this situation is far from over. In fact, it might just be entering its most explosive phase yet. Or to understand why this lawsuit is hitting the internet the way it is, you have to look at everything that led up to this moment. Because for a lot of people, this didn't start with the investigator. It started with how Erika Kirk has presented herself ever since Charlie's passing. From the very beginning, viewers noticed something they couldn't quite explain. Not something they could prove, but something they felt. The tone, the delivery, the composure, it all came across very controlled, very steady, almost too composed for what people expected from someone going through that level of loss. And again, it's important to say this clearly. Grief looks different for everyone. There is no correct way to respond. But when thousands of people independently start noticing the same patterns, it naturally turns into a conversation. One of the biggest things people pointed out was how quickly she stepped into public-facing roles. Interviews, speeches, appearances. Instead of pulling back, she seemed to lean into visibility. For some, that came across as strength. But for others, it felt fast. Like there wasn't a visible period of withdrawal or silence that people often associate with grief. And then there were the smaller details, the ones that don't seem like much on their own, but start to stand out when you stack them together. The way she spoke about Charlie in past tense early on, the confidence in her tone, the way certain emotional moments came across more polished than raw, all of it created a feeling for some viewers that something didn't fully align with their expectations. Then came the moments that really pushed things into a different direction. The clips started circulating online, short, out of context or not, showing behind-the-scenes behavior that people began analyzing heavily. Some claimed she appeared to be preparing herself emotionally right before stepping into public view. Others pointed to moments where her expressions seemed to switch quickly once cameras were on. Again, none of this is confirmed proof of anything. But perception is powerful. And once people start looking at someone through a certain lens, every new clip gets interpreted through that same perspective. At the same time, another detail added fuel to the fire: her stance on people investigating further into what happened. Erika Kirk publicly discouraged deeper digging, calling it dangerous and urging people to stop. But the internet doesn't work like that. Or the moment you tell people not to look into something, they look even harder. And that's exactly what happened. Instead of calming things down, it made people more curious, more invested, and more determined to connect dots on their own. So by the time this reported lawsuit against the private investigator came out, the groundwork was already there. The questions, the skepticism, the divided opinions, all of it had been building for weeks. And now, instead of slowing down, it feels like everything just leveled up. Now, here's where things really take a turn, because the moment Erika Kirk reportedly decided to go after a private investigator, the conversation didn't slow down. It exploded. And the reason is simple. When something moves from online speculation into legal action, people don't see that as the end of a story. They see it as confirmation that something serious is happening behind the scenes. Because think about it. For weeks, people had been watching clips, analysing behaviour, and debating what they were seeing. But once a lawsuit enters the picture, the entire tone shifts. It's no longer just opinions and comment sections. It becomes real-world consequences, real pressure, and real stakes. And this is where the internet split even harder than before. One side immediately said, "This makes sense." From their perspective, if someone feels like they're being misrepresented or falsely accused, taking legal action is the only way to protect themselves. In today's world, where narratives can spiral out of control in hours, stepping in legally can be seen as drawing a line and saying, "Sure, enough." But the other side, they saw it completely differently. To them, the timing raised more questions than answers, because instead of addressing concerns earlier, clarifying details, or directly responding to the growing speculation, the first major move appears to be legal action. And for a lot of people watching, that felt like a shift from defense to control. Not necessarily proof of anything, but a change in strategy. Because once you try to shut something down legally, it doesn't always stop the conversation. Sometimes it amplifies it. People start asking, what exactly triggered this? What did the investigator find? Why was this the moment to act? And those questions spread fast. Faster than the original clips ever did. At the same time, the role of the private investigator itself added another layer. Because investigators, by nature, are associated with uncovering hidden details, connecting information, and looking deeper than surface-level explanations. So when someone moves legally against that kind of figure, it immediately creates curiosity. People start wondering whether the issue is about accuracy or about exposure. Again, there's no confirmed answer, but the perception alone is enough to keep the story alive. And that's the key point here. Perception. Because right now, this entire situation isn't being driven by one single piece of evidence. It's being driven by how everything looks when placed side by side. The behaviour, the responses, the warnings not to investigate, and now the lawsuit, all of it forms a pattern in the eyes of the public. And once people believe they're seeing a pattern, it becomes very hard to change that narrative. So instead of closing the chapter on this situation, this move may have just opened a much bigger one. Now, this is the moment where the story stops being just an online discussion and turns into something much bigger. Because once names like Joe Rogan started getting linked to the conversation around Erika Kirk, everything changed. And it's not even about what was said directly. It's about what happens when a situation reaches that level of attention. Because when someone like Rogan even briefly touches on a topic, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It reaches millions of people who weren't even aware of the situation before. And suddenly, what was once a niche conversation becomes mainstream. And that's exactly what happened here. Where what started as clips circulating online, small discussions in comment sections, turned into a full-blown narrative being picked apart by a much larger audience. And once that happens, the intensity increases instantly. Because now you don't just have one group analysing details. You have thousands of new eyes coming in, each bringing their own perspective, their own interpretation, and their own questions. At the same time, this is where internet theories really started to take off. And it's important to separate clearly here. These are theories, not confirmed facts. But the reason they gain traction is because people felt like there were gaps in the story. When people feel like they don't have a complete picture, they start trying to fill in those gaps themselves. And that's when speculation grows fast. Small details, things that might not mean anything on their own, suddenly become part of a much larger narrative when connected together. Things like timelines, statements, behavior in interviews, and even tone of voice started getting analysed at a level that most public figures never experience. Every clip was slowed down, replayed, compared. Every word was picked apart. And once that level of scrutiny begins, it's almost impossible to stop. Because even if new information comes out, people have already formed opinions based on what they've seen so far. And this is where the situation becomes more complex, because it's no longer just about what actually happened. It's about what people believe happened. And those two things don't always match. One side sees a person being unfairly scrutinized, are saying the internet has taken things too far, connecting dots that don't belong together. The other side sees patterns, inconsistencies, and unanswered questions that they feel deserve deeper attention. That divide is what keeps this story alive. Because when there's no clear agreement, no definitive answer that satisfies everyone, the conversation doesn't end. It grows, it evolves, and every new detail, like this lawsuit, just feeds into it even more. And right now, with bigger platforms involved and more people watching than ever before, this situation isn't slowing down. Now this is where everything reaches peak intensity, because once the conversation hit a wider audience, people didn't just talk. They started bringing receipts, clips, and side-by-side breakdowns into the spotlight. And suddenly, Erika Kirk wasn't just being discussed. She was being analysed in real time. Old interviews started resurfacing. Short clips were cut, replayed, zoomed in, and slowed down. Every expression, every pause, every word choice, all of it became part of the conversation. And whether those clips were being interpreted correctly or not, they started shaping how people saw the entire situation. One of the biggest drivers behind this was how social media works. Once a narrative starts gaining traction, people begin connecting everything to it. A moment that once seemed normal suddenly looks different when placed next to another clip. A statement that didn't stand out before now feels significant when compared to something else. And before you know it, people aren't just reacting to one situation anymore. They're building a full storyline out of multiple pieces. That's exactly what happened here. It wasn't one single moment that pushed things over the edge. It was a chain of moments that people began linking together. At the same time, the reactions online became stronger and more divided than ever. Some people were completely convinced that something about the situation didn't add up. They pointed to the consistency of the questions being raised, the patterns they believed they were seeing, and the way certain moments felt to them. For that group, this wasn't random speculation. It was something they felt needed more clarity. But on the other side, there were just as many voices pushing back hard. People saying the internet had gone too far. That grief doesn't look the same for everyone, and that clips can easily be taken out of context and turned into something they're not. And that's what makes this stage of the story so intense, because it's no longer about facts alone, it's about interpretation. Two people can watch the exact same clip and walk away with completely different conclusions. One sees something suspicious, the other sees something completely normal. And when that happens across thousands of viewers at the same time, the conversation doesn't settle, it escalates. Now add the lawsuit into that environment, and it takes things to another level. Because for some, legal action validates the seriousness of the situation. But for others, it reinforces their suspicion that something bigger is being challenged or pushed back against. Either way, it keeps attention locked in. And right now, that attention is at its highest point. Because every new clip, every reaction, every post, it all feeds into a story that people feel is still incomplete. At this point, it's clear this situation has moved way beyond a simple controversy. It's become a full-scale public narrative that keeps evolving every single day. Because when you look at everything together, the behavior people have been analyzing, the growing online theories, the involvement of bigger voices like Joe Rogan, and now the reported legal action from Erika Kirk, it's obvious this story isn't slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it's picking up more momentum. And here's the reality. This is no longer just about what actually happened. It's about perception. It's about how millions of people are interpreting what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and how all those pieces fit together in their minds. One side believes this has gone too far, that the internet has taken fragments of information and turned them into something much bigger than it should be. The other side believes there are still too many unanswered questions, too many moments that feel off, and too many details that deserve closer attention. And when those two sides clash like this, the conversation doesn't end. It grows louder. The lawsuit is what really changed the tone. Because now this isn't just online speculation anymore. It's something that could play out in a real-world setting with real consequences. And that adds pressure on every side. It raises the stakes. It brings more attention. And it guarantees that whatever happens next is going to be watched even more closely than before. But the biggest thing to understand is this. We are still in the middle of this story. Not at the beginning, not at the end, right in the middle. And situations like this don't resolve quietly. They unfold in stages. One development leads to another. One reaction triggers the next. And before you know it, everything shifts again. So now I'm asking you. After seeing all of this, where do you stand? Do you think Erika Kirk is simply defending herself against narratives that got out of control? Or do you think there are still real questions that haven't been answered yet? Do you believe the lawsuit will calm things down or make everything even louder? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Don't hold back. If you made it this far, you already know this story is far from over. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who's been following this situation because trust me, the next update on this is going to hit even harder. Stay locked in because this isn't the end.